Bjorn emerged back in the city filled with explorers. Now the story is going to be more interesting, my horny friends. But for now, he was back in Raftonia amidst the hustle and bustle of people. It's a place filled with a tremendous amount of people because all the explorers are gathered in one place. But for now, he began to reset his clock because time in the labyrinth flows differently than in the city. No matter how many days you spent in the labyrinth, once you come back to the city, it's always noon on the next day. And you have to reset your clock so that it points to noon. I was curious about one thing. If no matter how many days you spent in the dungeon, you come out the next day and the higher the floor, the more days it takes to close, does it mean you age faster compared to the person outside? Or does the age of the person inside the dungeon not increase? Think the second option is more reasonable. What do you guys think? Let me know in the comment section. Let's get back to the story. In the crowd, he saw a tall barbarian calling out to him, and he wondered what this guy's name was. As the two men shook hands, Bjorn remembered his name as Vanon's second son, Karak, but he was actually the third son. Well, Bjorn always does that. Then another one came, and he was glad to see both safe. This guy's name was Serum, and the name reminded me of something. What about? After that, within a moment, a crowd of barbarians gathered around, surrounding Vanon's second son, Karak, talking about their experience in the labyrinth. He sure was a popular guy, but Bjorn didn't seem to be happy about it. They were having a whole reunion, but I didn't see Aner anywhere. Maybe we'll see her in the future. For now, one of the barbarians challenged Karak to a duel, and Karak accepted it, which was a celebratory barbarian thing. So they all decided to head out to the bravery checkpoint, where they could get their magic crystals counted, as well as talk some more and share their experiences as they walked away. They asked Bjorn if he was coming with them. It didn't really seem like he wanted to, but he obliged anyways, because what else could he do? At the register table, a lady was counting all of the magic crystals. Some had 20,000, some had 30,000, and at the end, Vanon's third son, Karak, stood above them all with 40,000 magic crystals. Everybody was cheering for him, calling him the warrior of warriors. Then Bjorn walked up to the register and dropped a bunch of bags on the counter. The cashier lady began to calculate. She was so fast that Bjorn was left shocked. After the count was done, it turned out that Bjorn had 182,413 magic crystals. Hearing the numbers, Bjorn was also in shock. After hearing that, they gathered around him and started cheering for him. They also noticed his equipment and bag and started saying that they were jealous of him and that he was a true warrior. All of them were truly happy for him. He was being lifted up and thrown in the air by a crowd of barbarians. And he enjoyed that moment. But people started to complain about it. So the squad decided to hang outside of the checkpoint while some of them stayed inside the building to get their magic crystals counted. As they sat on the steps, Bjorn decided that he should follow all the other barbarians because there might be something left to do that he doesn't know about, and he doesn't want to take the risk of getting exposed. So he would wait for them to return and stick with them. In the distance, he saw a group of elves hanging out. In that group, he saw Erwin. She was talking to her friends about how she learned to control spirits, and they applauded her. Bjorn felt envious because she hung out with that sort of crowd. But he was surrounded by the savages instead. He noticed that she looked at him and waved stealthily from afar, trying to hide her connection with him. He quietly told her to meet tonight, and she agreed. Then the elf lady asked Erwin if she knew him. She denied it immediately. Meanwhile, the same happened to Bjorn. Karag asked him if he knew the elf, but Bjorn said no. Of course, barbarians are free, spirited and loud, and this guy straight up shouted that there's no way a #1 warrior like him would hang out with those cowardly earheads. This pissed off Erwin's friends, and the mood became tense all of a sudden, but she didn't escalate the situation. Bjorn was annoyed, but thankfully, the rest of the barbarians came out of the building. So Bjorn got up telling the other barbarians that they should leave now that everyone's here. On the way, he noticed a child calling out to his father. The child ran up to his father and hugged him. They told each other that they missed one another. This was also a feature in the Dungeon and Stone game. Anyways, there were moments of joy once you came out of the labyrinth. People would meet their families and friends. However, there were also moments where people would die, and the repercussions of that could be felt. A woman cries to her husband's companion, begging him to tell her where he is. But the companion can say nothing because her husband had died. Another moment happens where a woman is crying as a little girl innocently asks her mother where her brother is. These moments of agony and sadness couldn't be felt throughout the 2D game graphics. But now, seeing it in real life, his feelings were in chaos. After some time, the barbarians raised their mugs to drink the night away, pouring liquor down their throats like true barbarians. Bjorn thought these guys were going to do something important, and he was worried he might miss a necessary step of sorts. But they were just trying to get drunk. He was angry looking at them, wasting his time. So he slammed his hand on the table and told them that he had somewhere else to be. Karak was shocked upon hearing this. The whole crowd became angry when they heard this. It looked as if they would kill him because he is the protagonist of the night and he is leaving. But they let him go happily while still calling him the best warrior. As he walked through the streets of Raftonia, he could hear the laughter and joy in people's voices. This place was peaceful, and he felt comfortable walking around. He thought that there were no monsters or humans that would harm him. As he looked around at stores, he felt the relaxation of being in a place that had rules and laws. In this place, even if he fell down on the ground, nothing would happen to him. Unlike the labyrinth, someone might even help him. Then he walked into a hotel to properly take a rest, then started thinking that this other world might be more barbaric than the 21st century Earth, but it was still peaceful. Then he got a room for himself so he could change and shower. All those near-death encounters in the labyrinth had made him realize that living in Raftonia might not be that bad. After he came out of the shower, feeling refreshed, and now all he wanted was a comfortable bed to sleep. But thoughts of his home were rushing through his mind. He still wanted to go home, even if there is no one to greet him at home. As nighttime approached, Bjorn woke at 9 at night, feeling fully refreshed and relaxed. He remembered that he came out of the labyrinth at noon, so he must have slept around 4 to 5 hours. It was now time to go meet Erwin at the Black Whale Tavern. But an old man told him that the Black Whale Tavern was sold off 10 years ago. Bjorn was shocked to hear this. Then the old man got more into detail. Apparently, the son of the original owner got into gambling addiction, ending up costing him the tavern, so the name and the owner both changed. Bjorn kind of expected it, but the game's version of Raftonia must have been years behind this one. Then he asked the old man the new name for the tavern. The old man told him the new name. The tavern was now called Python Path, and Bjorn had arrived at the place ready to meet Erwin. After seeing it, he wondered that the Black Whale Tavern used to look much different from this place in the game. He was glad that at least he can read this world's language. So he had to go to the library to fill his missing knowledge of this world. Then he entered, and this place was filled with people going wild. He immediately started looking around for Erwin, but she found him before he could. She called him over by waving her hand and saying his name. However, he noticed the elf lady from earlier was also there. The short-haired woman stared at him angrily, saying that he is the barbarian from earlier. He introduced himself as Jandal's son, Bjorn, and asked her who she was. She said she's the older sister of Erwin. Then Bjorn said that her name couldn't be older sister, so she just told him to call her Teresa. Then he remembered that Erwin's last name was Teresa, so this lady was trying to keep her real name hidden. He asked her reason why she was there. Then she stood up and slammed her hand on the table. She asked Bjorn why he called Erwin to such an inappropriate tavern like this last night, and then stood her up, making her stay the night out. And now he is asking what her purpose here is. She insults him, calling him a thick-skinned barbarian. Then Bjorn asks her what she means by it. Then she replied and said, "Are you trying to play dumb?" After hearing that, he got confused and asked Erwin how much time it has been since they got out from the labyrinth. She answers him that it had been 30 hours. Bjorn was feeling like an idiot right now. First, he thought it had been 4 to 5 hours. But nope, it had been a whole 30 hours. He realized the reason why he felt so refreshed after waking up. It was because he slept over a day. Seeing Erwin, he was feeling sorry, so he apologized and told them that he overslept. After hearing that, both of them were shocked, especially Erwin's sister, to see a barbarian apologizing. After that, in shock and embarrassment, she asks Bjorn why he would call Erwin. Bjorn could have given many long reasons, but he said he had no obligation to answer her. She can ask Erwin if she wants and piss her off again. She says he is just a beginner, and then Bjorn replies that she should throw away that kind of attitude unless she intends on taking care of Erwin all her life. Then she calls him a savage and slams a huge bag of 350,000 magic stones on the table. After seeing it, he feels like he is in K-dramas. Bjorn just stared at the stones, and this made Erwin's sister wonder why he wasn't taking it. She knew that he had a different reason for asking Erwin to meet. Does she think Bjorn is Johnny Bro or something who accepts any types of payments? Bjorn looked at Erwin and asked her if she agrees with her, but she doesn't know what to say. At least for a moment. However, Bjorn tells her that the deal for giving her the essences was that she'd help until he got the amount he wanted. After hearing that, Erwin was a little disappointed. Then Bjorn told her that they would also split the rewards 50-50. Erwin was overjoyed at first, but suddenly she realized something and asked for Bjorn's forgiveness because she wouldn't be able to go labyrinth exploring with him anymore. This made Bjorn wonder and puzzled because he thought that they were a really good and pretty compatible duo. Then her sister explained that she comes and explores the labyrinth with her from now on. She said that they were just following tradition and letting her go alone since it was her first time. However, she never intended on letting Erwin explore the labyrinth on her own. Bjorn now realized that she already had someone to accompany her through the labyrinth, and he was jealous of people with personal connections. Then she pushed the bag further towards him and said that if he understood, he should just take this pouch. But Bjorn stopped her and said that it was a result of splitting the essences in half. She responded that this was indeed because it's the loot they got together. But according to Bjorn, the bag was still lacking 280,000 stones because the promised share was 9-1. She smirked and slammed another bag with the remaining 280,000 stones on the table. He realized that this woman just tried to con him, and he kind of gets why the barbarians hated elves now. He immediately told her to get out if she is done here, so that he and Erwin can get on with the remaining private matters they needed to talk about. Of course, she wasn't going to move, but Erwin poked her on the elbow and told her that while she appreciated her coming here with her, she should go now. She wanted to thank Bjorn and say her goodbyes. This was one of those weird moments when you realize your younger sibling isn't a child anymore. However, she retaliated, pointing her finger at Bjorn and asking him to swear that he won't sleep with Erwin. If he agrees to swear, she will leave immediately. Erwin was embarrassed and shocked that she would say that out loud. Meanwhile, Bjorn wondered if that meant that all the other options were still on. She told him to swear. It didn't mean anything to him, but he swore on his warrior's honor. But Erwin looked most disappointed. After that, she decided to leave, but she still had something else to say to Bjorn. She turned around, thanked him for saving Erwin and keeping her safe in the labyrinth. Erwin slammed her head on the table in embarrassment and was worried that she might have upset her sister. She had never spoken up for herself like this before, and if she was mad at her now. Bjorn told her that she didn't look angry because she was smiling and told her not to worry about it. Erwin remembered and apologized to him that they won't be able to be a team again because she had made up her mind to work with her sister a long time ago. He told her that she didn't need to apologize. Bjorn was a considerate and rational guy. Even he wouldn't have rejected the offer either if some high-level elf offered to carry him. Then Erwin pulled out another bag of 63,000 magic crystals. These were from the loot that they got from the redhead and the crossbow guy. and she had already taken her share, so this was all that was left for him. She also told him that she left the 2 backpacks that she took off at her place, and there were a bunch of things there. So she invited him to take a look for himself tomorrow. Jorn was surprised that she knows what he wanted to ask without him mentioning anything, but he was disappointed that he already had to give her up as his teammate. Then Erwin asked the last question, and she asked him how she should repay him. He was confused. Then she explained that she had told him that she would repay him for helping her. This is the reason why her sister made him swear that he wouldn't sleep with her. For a moment, Johnny Bro took him over. However, he just told her that he couldn't think of anything at the moment and then asked her if she wanted to eat anything. She told him that she wasn't hungry, so he decided that he would just order for himself because he was starving. This brought an idea to Erwin's mind. She said that she wanted alcohol. She hadn't taken a sip of alcohol yesterday because she wanted to drink the first return drink with him and truly celebrate with him. Jorn remembered that return drinks were a culture in the game, especially for elves who only lived in their shrines until they were adults and put huge importance on the first return drink. He said that he was glad, but Erwin leaned in closer and told him that he's supposed to say thank you, and he said thanks to her. Erwin was happy. She told him that they went through so much together in the labyrinth, so it was a given that they share their first return drink with each other. She said that this is probably not his first return drink though, but he says that it was actually the first time he was going to have a return drink. She was surprised to know that he was serious when he told her that he was only 20 years old, which is the same age as her. She had initially thought that he might just be joking. He told her that it was his first time in the labyrinth as well. They start celebrating, and as they're celebrating, Erwin tells Bjorn that he did a great job. Then he tells her that she was great too. The two raised their mugs and slammed their mugs together in a toast. After a bit, their mugs were empty and their food was done. Erwin said that Bjorn was wearing a shirt today as she looked at him, and Bjorn only said in his mind that she was wearing a skirt today. Bjorn took a big sip of rum and decided that it was time for him to talk about the more important stuff now. Meanwhile, Erwin just kept admiring his ability to drink. He asked her if she still wanted to repay him, because he has thought of a way. She asked him what it was, but he said he couldn't tell her here, because he feared that the security would come after them. She blushed and looked at him and asked him if they should head up to his room. After they went to the Bjorn room, outside of Bjorn's door, moaning of a woman can be heard from inside. Inside, Bjorn told her to spread wider. He was sweating as he tried hard. As she moaned and screamed louder and said to let it go, he was just scratching her shoulder to check her stats effects. But Erwin screamed out loud from the pain, telling him that he was going to dislocate her shoulder because it had never gone that far back before. He still wanted to make sure though, and asked her if she was sure this was the breaking point. She swore on her family, crying and screaming, so he let her go and told her to rest for a bit. When he let her go, she was in complete shock at being alive. She thought she would lose her arm and life from all that. She looked annoyed and disappointed. She wanted to know if he asked her to come to his room just so he could check her abilities and stats. Then he said that ability use wasn't allowed within the city, and he really wanted to check the difference in her body after the essence. But in reality, he wanted to check the difference between the game and real life. He did this because Dungeon and Stone was not a user-friendly game. There were 3 main stats: body, mind, and ability stats. However, there was a plus icon on the side of each of the main stats. And when you press it, there are thousands of detailed stats. For example, if stamina were to increase, you could carry heavier items and perform better in physical attacks. This was the reason that different characters were capable of different things, despite the numbers of their stats being the same. Bjorn has come to learn of this because he practically put his whole life into the game. But there were still stats that had effects he still did not know about. Erwin was hoping and asking if there is something else they are going to do. Meanwhile, Bjorn was there wondering about the obsession stat that came with the essence Erwin ate. He doesn't know much about it except that it was a low-ranking stat in the mind stat, and that's all he knew about it. So he asked her if she felt a change in her mindset after she left the labyrinth. Did she start overthinking about something or having patience issues? He needed to know more. She wasn't sure. Still, She remembered that she had a desire for cookies right as soon as she came out of the labyrinth. She did not like them before, but she ate a bunch of them when she came back. He wondered if the obsession stat increased desire, which is probably a given. There were still other stats he didn't know about, so he had to take it into consideration when choosing the essence. Maybe this is the reason why she is so horny for Bjorn, because of the obsession stat. As he was thinking, the horny elf pulled his shirt and said she was sleepy. There were still things he wanted to check, but he couldn't anymore, so they decided to sleep, putting out all the candles in the room. Bjorn closed his eyes, ready to relax. In that moment, he remembered something he had sworn on. As Erwin slept leaning on his chest, he remembered that her sister had made him swear not to sleep with her, but he said to himself that she probably meant the other kind of sleeping together. They got up early in the morning and had brought all of the loot back to Bjorn's inn. Erwin asked Bjorn if he was going to sell everything. Bjorn told her that he was going to sell most of it, except for a few items. Erwin had her eye on a piece of gear, a leather outfit, and a belt. She asked him if she could have it. He told her that she can have it if she subtracts its cost from her share, and she agreed. Later on, they went to a merchant shop where they sold all of the extra equipment for a good amount of money. The sword was sold for 350,000 stones. Later, Bjorn sold some more stuff for 180,000 stones. Then they sold the backpacks, which went for a whopping 250,000 stones. After a few more visits to different shops and merchants, they had a solid amount of money in their hands. The bags of money had piled up, and they had earned a total of 1,450,000 stones. As they held the bags of money in their hands, Erwin was shocked after seeing that much money, but she earned just change compared to Bjorn. He really is a heartless man. Bjorn gets almost 1.4 million stones after subtracting Erwin's share because he also killed a man alone before meeting her. He had never made this much money in the game's start before. This was a nice start for him. They walked out into the street. Bjorn told her that this is where they should part. This surprised Erwin. Then he wondered why she was surprised, because they had already decided to go their separate ways. He told her that they're taking the same route, so they should walk to the central square together. Even though she agreed to it, she really wanted to spend more time with him. As they walked up to the town square, they saw a huge crowd of people standing around a guillotine blade. Bjorn and Erwin walked up there. A guard screamed out loud, stating that there was an execution happening and that everyone should back off. A man was forced into the guillotine, his head and hands poking out as his face sealed up with bandages. These people hadn't committed any serious crimes. Their only crime was that they hadn't been able to pay the taxes. The execution began, and the guard pulled at the rope. Rafdonia was the final remaining city of the other world that ended at the hands of a witch's curse. The only place to get resources in this limited space was the labyrinth. Therefore, those who couldn't pay taxes were executed to decrease the number of mouths to feed. As the blood hit the pavement from those who were executed, a bunch of people came running and holding pieces of bread. They dipped their bread in the blood and started eating it. Erwin was barely holding herself from throwing up, asking Bjorn why they were dipping bread into the blood. He told her that there's a legend that everyone who drinks the blood of the executed will gain great financial luck. Bjorn asked Erwin how much the taxes were for the first year. She told him that it's 700,000 stones for non-humans. He realized that it was a bit off from the game, but similar. He asked her what it is from the second year and afterwards. She told him that it was 800,000 stones, and they were exchanging fees too. This was the same number as the game. As they stood there, looking at them devour the bread with blood sauce, Bjorn started thinking about tax rise each year of work. And if he can't get back to his real life, and if he can't compete with the increasing taxes, his blood might be the one that people are dipping their bread into. And to avoid that, he has to save money. And for that, he needs to become an explorer that can at least reach the 6th floor. The scene switches to the library. As he walked in, he wondered why people were staring at him because he was a barbarian in the library. Then he saw Einar using a book in the library as a pillow and sleeping. Well, it's good that she's okay, because we didn't see her after he came out with the other barbarians. He walked up to her and poked her, wondering why she was there. She woke up, saliva drooling down her face as she looked at him. Bjorn looked at her and said that he was glad to see she was doing fine. She gave him a smile, telling him that she feels the same. He told her to lower her voice because they were in a library. She answered that she never expected to see her fellow barbarian here. Bjorn asked her what she was doing here. She told him that she was here because of what he said to her earlier. He told her that she should think before acting, and she wanted to gather more knowledge in order to think properly. Bjorn was surprised because she is different from the rest. She tells him that while she was in the labyrinth, she realized that the monsters weren't the only enemies they had to encounter. As she's speaking, Bjorn thinks about how if there was any regular barbarian in her place, they would be bragging about their experience. Instead, she said that this is why she decided to study, but she found reading to be very, very difficult for her. So she wanted to learn how to read and write properly, and she was thinking of going to their shrine so she could learn all that from the elders. He asked her if she was going right now, and she said that if she doesn't, she would forget about it. As she's walking, she remembers that she promised to repay him for his advice if they came back alive from the labyrinth. She told him that if he ever needed anything, all he had to do was ask her at the Angry Bull Tavern. He looked at her and said that he would definitely come to her if he needed. He was simultaneously hoping that she doesn't forget about this promise in a couple of days, because he was probably going to need her help very soon. Anyways, he needed to find a book, and he didn't know how to do that in a place this big. His eyes went straight towards a girl sitting at the front desk, which is the librarian. He walked up to her as she slept on the job. He tried speaking to her, and the girl woke up while raising her head. She looked at him and asked him what he needed. He tells her that he's looking for a book, one that is related to history, but she interrupts him and casts some spells, conjuring up a weird ball of light that starts floating towards Bjorn. He's confused about what magic she cast. Then the ball of light shimmers its way into his chest. Bjorn is unsure of what changed because he doesn't feel any different. The librarian tells him that now he can find any book that he's looking for in the library. She also tells him that he's allowed to borrow any book, but he has to put it back where he takes it from. Bjorn tries to ask for details about the magic, but the librarian already becomes the Sleeping Beauty. After that, he walks around in the library. He quickly realizes how the magic works. It's quite simple. All he has to do is walk around, and the book he wants to read would shine. Now he understands why there's only one librarian in a library this big, and she still has time to sleep. After that, he starts reading books. The first book, titled The Fallen World, talks about the history from thousands of years ago, where no living beings could live due to a witch's curse, and the last remaining fortress, Rafdonia, was the only place that managed to avoid the disaster. The royal family opened up a dimension for the people who were starving to death because of limited resources. That became the labyrinth. This was similar to the game's prologue. He already knows it. Then the second book he read was Alchemy's Basics. It talks about how magic crystals from monsters can be made into bread, water, steel, and such. They are literally changing the atomic structure. Isn't it too much? Well, it was also too much for Bjorn to understand the theory, so he just memorized it for now. After that, the next book was Is Sacred War 3. It talks about how the barbarians and the elves come to hate each other. The fourth book he really wants to read about was The Evil Spirits of the Abyss. The evil spirits refer to those people who had come from different dimensions and had possessed other people's bodies. This was technically correct, but it doesn't describe why it happens. It's clear that the temples and the royal family had tried their hardest to get rid of this phenomenon. Well, what I think is that someone from the royal family is also one of the people from Earth, like Earth. And then he made it public to get rid of any competition. Well, it's just my theory. He learned one thing from it, And that is, as long as he didn't say any of the forbidden words, he would be pretty much okay. The fifth book, titled On the Death of the King, is about the first ever king, also called the Immortal King, Lavajan III. It talks about how he died over 150 years ago. Basically, he lived for thousands of years. Since he was the first king, and I think it's also related to evil spirits and my theory, the game's story started after his death. So that means Bjorn was 150 years after the game timeline. This is why his knowledge of the game world kept contradicting the reality in this world. Previously, I think I said it was a 10-year gap, but it was actually a 150-year gap. After that, he moved on to the book about the dimension's instability of observation records. While reading this book, Bjorn had a realization that this might be the book that the blondie who had saved him had read. This book mentions a theory that says entering a portal in the moment that it was closing could have something to do with that instability. Perhaps that is why that happened to him. That made him feel depressing because he had no one else to blame but himself for the torture he had to go through. It had gotten dark outside, so he decided to read the rest later. After that, he goes back to his room and thinks about how it had been 3 whole days since he had left the labyrinth. The labyrinth opens up on every first day of the month at exactly midnight. So he has 27 days left to prepare himself, and he has to find a new member for his party from tomorrow onwards. In early morning, Bjorn woken up by loud knocking noises on his room's door. It was Erwin who was knocking the door. He hurried to get out of bed, then he opened the door to see why she was standing outside. He asked her why she was banging on his door so early in the morning. He was just saying, but suddenly he felt an incredibly powerful gust of wind. It was Erwin's new contract. She was excited to show Bjorn that she had succeeded with the new Sprit contract. She told him that she had tried 10 times with the spirit stone that her sister gave her, and it worked out, and it's a wind spirit. It was perfect match with her fire spirit. He congratulates her, but in his mind, he was think about that how rich her sister and her family is, because Sprit stone is an item that lets you sign a contract with a Sprit with 10% possibility. But they are pretty expansive, and she tried in times. And before she was saying she have a little brother to take care, acting like a poor, helpless lady. Well, whatever. After he saw it, he told her to get rid of it. She wanted to show him more, telling him that she hadn't shown him everything she can do. Then her to look what mess she made in his room. After seeing it, she started to apologize. She promised to clean up the whole mess right away. A little while later, Erwin sat on the bed looking tired after she was done cleaning up the whole room. Bjorn looked at the room and wondered how incredibly talented she was at cleaning, even though she had told him before that she was great at it. He congratulated her on having a contract with a spirit, and she was really happy as she thanked him. But he is a stud. He told her that she shouldn't have come to him just to show him this. He tells her that she should have spent her time much more wisely, because she would have to go back into the labyrinth in 26 days. While Erwin agreed with his logic, she had wanted him to be the first to know about her achievement. Bjorn wondered why she felt so attached to him and speculated that it might be due to an obsession trait she gained from a goblin archer essence. He wanted to maintain a business-like relationship, but also expressed his willingness to be there for her as a friend and fellow comrade. As the morning continued, Bjorn planned to use his time effectively. He went to a place called the Angry Bull, where many barbarians were staying. He was welcomed by cheers from the crowd, being recognized as the strongest warrior. Inside the inn, a barbarian warrior informed Bjorn that he could stay for a cheap price due to multiple barbarians sharing rooms. Bjorn revealed that he was there to see Feneline's third daughter. He was still forgetting the names. Then that barbarian corrected him, because Einar was Feneline's second daughter, and I think it is very important. Einar arrived to the scene, and that guy told her that Bjorn was looking for her. She walked up to Bjorn and asked him why he had come to see her. Bjorn told her that he had a favor to ask her, which is that he wanted to fight her. She asked him if this was for training purposes, And he said yes, he needed to get stronger because he knew he wouldn't be able to survive with his current fighting skills. Einar told him that it wasn't really a favor. If you wanted that, all he had to do was come out to the field where there were already dozens of sparring. She told him that as long as it wasn't in the morning, she was ready to fight whenever he wanted. He told her that they should begin right away. The crowd was ready to see some combat as Bjorn dashed towards her. He knew that he came to learn, but he wasn't intending to lose either. The fight began, and Bjorn rushed toward Einar with his full power. Einar was also ready. She swung her sword, and Bjorn's body hit the ground with his face bruised and nose bleeding. Crowd starting to shout that Einar is the best warrior now. She walked up to him and asked him if he was okay. He answered that he was fine and asked her for one more fight. And just like that, they keep fighting for an entire day. They both are huffing like a dog. But Einar asked Bjorn that it's fine if he wanted to keep going, but she would like to rest for a bit. I don't know why, but to me it's looked like she is also from another world. It's just my thoughts. He told her that was enough for today and asked her if she was going to go to the labyrinth alone next time around as well. And she nodded. She told him that she was too broke to form a party, so this was her only option. Bjorn immediately asked if she'd like to be his teammate, and he would keep 80 of the profits, but that he would pay for the party fees and everything. But in reply, she told him to shut up, as she had already heard enough. Bjorn stated to feel nervous. He was worried she wouldn't agree to be his teammate, so he brought up other ideas for her to stick around. But Einar just grabbed his hand and told him that she wouldn't understand even if he tried to explain it to her. However, she trusted him to join the party. He told her that he was looking forward to working with her. Next day, Bjorn headed to the Barbarian Shrine, a place of great importance to the barbarians. Here they saw the chief of the tribe. I like this old man's smile. He welcomed both Einar and Bjorn. Old man asked him if he had come to learn how to read and write like Einar had, but Bjorn denied it. He was not here for that. He was come here something more. That thing called the spirit seal, or more specifically, he wanted a spirit seal called the undead seal.